Hello. So, I haven't posted for like a week because I didn't feel like it, but I plan on getting back to daily uploads, and I'm actually going to be starting a new series. There's going to be a bunch of videos on the Cold War, probably like 5. So, before we start that, well, we'll actually start now, but we have to get to the reason why the Cold War happened. So, in order to do that, we really have to go back to the beginning of time technically, but we'll start with in 1917. So World War I is raging over Europe, and the people in Russia are effectively starving, and this doesn't make them happy. So they start a revolt. Vladimir Lenin revolts against the Tsar. He kills them all, and then marches into Moscow and is like, "Haha, I'm your leader now." So Lenin does that, and the Soviet Union is formed with him and a bunch of other people. America obviously existed at the time, but yeah, the Soviet Union happened. Lenin died around 7 years later, I believe in 23, and Joseph Stalin took over, and 20 years later, World War II was happening. Germany was pretty much destroying Europe. They made it all the way to Paris and were, I believe, 20 miles outside of Moscow. That is really close. That is around the size of Manhattan. So it was a close war, but in the end, winter came. The Russians were not about to give up Moscow. And so they didn't. And Germany ended up losing. Russia was able to push back the Germans after a victory in Moscow, Stalingrad, and Leningrad, St. Petersburg now. 13% of Russia's population died during World War II, and 20% of males born in the Soviet Union in 1923 lived past 1945. That's just how deadly it was for the Soviets. 1 million people in the city of Leningrad survived out of 4 million. And I believe only 10% of Stalingrad survived, but I'm not quite sure how true that is. It probably isn't, but whatever. And while this was happening, while Russia was pushing Germany back to Germany, America, Britain, and Canada, I guess, which was Britain at the time, landed a bunch of troops in Normandy and were able to invade through Germany, and eventually the Soviets actually reached Berlin first. And Hitler killed himself in his bunker a few days earlier, 8 days, I believe. And then the Allies, so Churchill, Stalin, and I think it was Roosevelt, not Truman, met. Yeah, it was Roosevelt. They all met at the Yalta Conference to decide what would happen to Europe, and they effectively decided with, okay, Stalin. Oh, by the way, Churchill and Roosevelt didn't really trust Stalin. They didn't tell him much during the war, and even though he'd helped them defeat the Germans, that doesn't mean they have to trust Stalin. So they were like, okay, Stalin, you take Eastern Europe, so anything east of Berlin, really, and we can control Western Europe. Is that okay with you? And then Stalin was like, sure. He made them all communist countries, all under his influence, and this is really where the Cold War starts. So, an Iron Curtain, we'll get to that probably tomorrow. And yeah, that's the Cold War, why it started, and the sides were really Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union versus Western Europe and the United States. Subscribe, I guess. Twitch, Discord in description.